You know, it's crazy. I've been creating these best food plot mix videos and then articles for about 10 years now. So they go back a long ways. If you just type in 2015 best food plot mix or blend, going all the way up. And even Dylan and I were just talking about one of the ones we did. I've done these on a whiteboard. I've done them out in the field, and I like to go through some very specific points of what I feel is the best for you to plant, even how much and why. And so I want to answer some really good questions for you, very pointed. And so I think on the whiteboard is probably most effective to go through and list these things out. But I think it was 2016. It could have been 2017. Dylan, you're thinking 16?
Yep.
Where we did a best food plot blend mix and planting. And I actually planted in a thunderstorm, and the clouds in Wisconsin it was crazy. They opened up. We had a huge storm come in, and I wanted to finish my planting in the rain. And as I've done a lot of times, even on an ATV in the UP, I've planted in some bad storms. It's not what I encourage you to do. It's just sometimes that's what it's worked out for me, where I want to plant before rain. You see all of a sudden it's starting to explode, and I want to get that seed on the ground. And so it's so critical this time of year that you're planting with moisture in the forecast. And of course, you've taken care of your weeds. You have that soil, you have those conditions to get a good seed bed. And you've amended the soil. We use plot start, plot boost after it's growing, lime to improve the pH. There's a lot of things you can do to actually get everything prepared. But when it comes down to what to plant, that's what we're going to talk about. And back then it was thunderstorms right next to the window and talking about that whole mix. And we're going to go through it a little bit more stress-free today and a little bit more relaxed, and make sure you're on target for this year, because these strategies, these planting methods and what I do, I really started coming up with these over 25 years ago, written about them. They're in my books, food plot web class, which you can look for in the description. The bottom line is, these are tried and true practices and strategies I developed on my own long ago, and I really want them to help you and for you to understand those and how I change those up every single year. And it really could change for you. I don't like seeing that you should, I can't stand, if anyone online tells you have to plant this, they're probably trying to sell you something, or they just don't have the knowledge to know otherwise. Because as we'll discuss, and I've discussed before in these videos, whether you're in big woods, mixed ag, or light ag, or heavy ag, there really is a big difference for what you need to plant in your area and how much. And we'll discuss that. I want to talk about number one though, and then we'll flip over to a little diagram I have here. But number one, what's the goal of you planting each year? It seems like sometimes nowadays people have a goal of improving the soil. Folks, you can work on the soil for 50 years. The bottom line is you need to actually create a great place for deer to be attracted to. If you're going to offer attraction for the entire season, then you have the opportunity to build a hunt around that. I think a lot of people don't understand what it takes to build a hunt and actually hunt and improve and hunt at a high level. So really what they have left is just to improve the habitat. And there's a lot of people out there talking about that. But I want to see you guys actually plant food plots and create, and that goes along with creating habitat improvements on your land, and making improvements and planting food plots that actually help you hunt, help you build a great herd, because that's why you bought the land in the first place. Did you buy land just so you can improve soil? No, but you can do both. You can flip them back and forth, flip them around. You never need to sacrifice one for the other. You can go back to my UP and Michigan days, just rotating buckwheat and rye, mixing clover and brassica into that, and then again a layer of rye, back and forth. Improve my soil hundreds of times over with just in a few 2 or 3 year period of time. I publish that in Quality Whitetails in the QDMA. Just look up improving bad soils or improving poor soils online, and you can find that. You can find that link. You can take a look at that article, look at the parts per million that changed, how the pH changed. There's a lot you can do to your soil and still offer some food plot strategy. In fact, food plot strategy and hunting strategy and building a herd, that should come first, and then you improve the soil while you're doing it. Some people are improving the soil and they're forgetting about actually doing anything for the herd or hunt, so they're just kind of wasting their time. I mean, buy the property, improve soil. The bottom line is you have to have attraction for the entire season, diversity for the entire season, and volume, good volume. Because if you lack volume, but you have great attraction, it's not going to last for the season. If you don't have diversity, you're not going to have volume. The three work together. They work together to reach your whitetail goals, whether it's herd building, hunting building. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a great herd without a great hunt. The bottom line is you need to look at these right here. And what that boils down to for me, and this has been for many years, this is a food plot pyramid. You have to have the green base. This is number one by far. You have to have a green base. That's the base of every food plot program. I even see people around here that might have 1,500 acres, 2,000 acres, 900 acres, 700 acres. What do? They plant a bunch of corn and beans and call it a day. That doesn't give them the ability to build a herd because beans are very specific to the early season. A lot of times they get munched down with high deer populations, especially on large parcels. If you have small food plots, they're going to get knocked down to nothing. So the great thought is, well, they're going to be there in the early season, and then the deer magically leave them alone, and they're still standing in December. That's not the way it works 90% of the time. Most of the time, those beans don't make it to the season. I recommend beans planting a portion of the time, but I don't recommend planting beans all the time to all clients. In fact, it'd probably be more like 10%, 15%, depends on their situation. Corn, I might recommend 20, 25% of the time, and we'll have a deer-specific corn variety we offer next year. That's what our goal is. We're testing it right now. But it might be 20% of the time, 15%, 25%, depending on the year and depending on the clients that I'm going to. Green base, though, all the time, 100% of the time. You can use a green base to achieve attraction, diversity, and volume for the entire season. You cannot with corn. You cannot with beans. And you cannot with both of them together. It takes more than that. It takes more thought. It takes more strategy. That's why I want to take you guys to the next level. And so I come out with these videos each year. Mixed ag. Let's just talk about the amount of food you need. Mixed ag, it's more of a balanced amount. What do I mean by that? Is deer have the complement of other food sources in the area, especially ag fields, alfalfa fields, whatever it might be. Typically in most ag fields, the climate's not that bad. The soils are better. So they have better native habitat and vegetation. So 6 acres that lasts in an ag-rich area with mixed woods, that 40, 60, 50, 50, 70, 30 blend of whatever it is, of fields and woods and ag fields, whatever that mix is, that 6 acres of food in that location is going to last an entire season or 5 months or 4 months, 3 months, whatever it might be. You put that in a up north location with 1/3 as many deer because you don't have the complement of other food sources around, and the deer are hitting it 5 times in a 24-hour period because they feed 5 times in a 24-hour period. They're rhythmic pattern feeders. Then the deer eat it down to the dirt and there's nothing left. And that's why when we get into big woods, you need twice as much food to last the same amount of time as in a mixed ag region. And a lot of times the soils aren't as good. So you're not getting the volume. You might not necessarily be able to plant the diversity. And so what I plant in mixed ag, I plant a lot of, there's a decent number of deer, there's decent cover. I plant a lot of brassica blends with peas, sometimes oats, wheat, rye, radish, turnip. There's a lot of different green blends you can put together to actually create something. If it's on sandy soils, you might add vetch, buckwheat, more rye into that type of mixture. So really, I want that green. I want brassica on one side. I want green blend on the other. A lot of times I'll top dress that green blend with rye later. Very, very important in a mixed ag area. In big woods, that brassica blend that made it in a mixed ag area could be down to the dirt. Oh boy, soybeans that might not even make it till August. So I'm looking at layers of rye, wheat, oats, peas. We have a sandy soil extreme blend, a lot of northern areas with bad soil. So you're looking at what kind of, again, what's the most amount of attraction, diversity, and volume I can get on my plots to last the longest amount of time. It's not going to be the same planting for everybody. So when you get up north, I'm focusing more on cereal grains, maybe late summer planted buckwheat. The first frost is going to take it out, but it'll be good before then. Oats and peas, those are all pretty good for those drier, sandy soil mixes. And if you've improved the soil, if you have a lot of plots, if you're approaching those big acres, then maybe a brassica blend will work for you if you have better soils. I know in the UP of Michigan for on 8.5 acres for 10 years, I learned that brassica wouldn't make it till middle of October, early November, no matter what I did. Because it was poor soil, I didn't get a lot of volume, frost came early, and even though there weren't a lot of deer, they ate it down to the dirt because it was the only game in town. So again, what I planted down, I'd come down here to southwest Wisconsin. I'd plant those green blends of cereal grains on one side and peas. Oh boy, we tried all kinds of stuff back in the day. We tried sun hemp, products that people put into mixes now that we know don't work or won't make it because the deer eat it down to the dirt. The bottom line is always searching for that best green blend. So I'd plant one thing in the UP of Michigan in 2004. I plant something completely different down here at different timing down in southwest Wisconsin. So you can see when we go from one client to another, even 5 miles down the road, because of planting resources, number of deer, percentage of ag woods or open fields to woods, equipment, it can change just 5 miles down the road from one to another, let alone state to state, region to region. That's why we spend about 2 hours with our clients every time. Dylan's sitting here right now. I don't know if you're going to 80 clients or 80 days in the field, whatever it is this year, but a lot of our time on all those days is devoted to what has worked for you with your food plots. This is what you should plant. What are your resources? How many acres can you maintain? Do you have the time to maintain these? We come up with a prescription for success. But a lot of people are different from one. There's some constants, especially when you look at type of habitat. For example, when you get into heavy ag, you don't need a lot of food plot because there's so much other food in the area. And those ag-rich areas mean really good soils. And so we're a lot of times on small wood lots then because there's not a lot of cover. So we're using food to direct traffic. Now, if you have the space, great, but you're looking at more peas, a high attraction brassica blends. The brassica blends, you might need to add 25 pounds of beans per acre, 50 pounds of peas per acre to sweeten the brassica so they like it. You always put brassica alongside greens like cereal grains, peas. We add tillage radish to that sometimes, late planted buckwheat. But I want that green blend there to make it through the entire season. And that's critical. We want to match the attraction of the area too. We need a higher attraction green in a heavy ag area. This makes sense. You have a lower attraction green in a big woods area, but you don't have competition. So you're looking again at volume. What can I get to last for the entire season? The most attraction, the most diversity. And if your attraction is too high in a big woods area, you're not going to have enough volume to make it through the season. I hope that makes sense. So that really changes from one to the other. We like to split our plots in our holding plots. What's a holding plot? I don't like destination plot. People use that term, but ag fields around here are destination plots. Those are plots that deer go to after dark. So I don't want to have one of those on my property. I don't want to feed deer after dark. Let the neighbors do that. Let the neighbors do that in your area. In fact, I want to hold them until dark and then let them go to somewhere else. They're coming from my property, going to my food plots, holding till dark, and then leaving. That's the time I want them to leave. I don't want them coming from my neighbor's plots, getting to my plots at dark. That means I failed. So on those big holding plots, I want to split them in half. Meaning, if your plot is like this, then I'm going to split that right down the middle, and I'm going to have a northish half and a southerly half, something like that. And if I'm in this mixed ag area, a lot of times I'm putting brassica on one side because that gives me a huge amount of volume around August 1st, early August. If you're down in Tennessee, that might be third week of August. West Virginia might be middle of August. Louisiana might be September 1st. But bottom line is from north to south, up here in the north, we're doing that end of July, August 1st, all the way down to September 1st down to the south. But I want that brassica on one side. If the deer have trouble eating it, which they do in about 5-10% of all areas, that volume, it's good for them. It provides good moisture. I don't think sometimes you have to teach them to eat it. I think you have to plant it right. Meaning that if deer do not or are hesitant to hit the brassica in your area, then add 25 pounds of soybeans per acre, 50 pounds of peas, maybe both. That'll sweeten that plot. But it all starts too by having an attractive green base blend on the other side. So I've shied away from using oats like I did in the past because those oats get large, stemmy, and they can take over. So say, for example, a mix that has peas and beans in it. If you want to put enough peas and beans out there, you have to put too many oats, so the oats choke everything out. And so what we did in the past is we'd cut it by adding another 50 pounds of peas per acre, adding a little buckwheat on the top, a little bit of tillage radish, so we diminish the amount of oats in the mix. We don't do that anymore. Now they own a seed company. I just don't add the oats in there to begin with. And that's a good thing. If I want to add oats, I want to add that, a cold hardy oat more on Labor Day. With rye, I want to top dress that. I can add cold hardy peas at that time. But bottom line is I'm putting that green blend, a little bit of tillage radish because it's a brassica, but not a very high percentage. So we put tillage radish in there, late planted buckwheat, heavy amount of peas, maybe some vetch, a deer vetch, so that it's attractive. It jump starts really quick. All those can be thrown down in the ground. You need minimal amount of tillage to get it to grow. And they also are not very soil specific. They take off pretty quick. So we'll put something like that that has more candy crops, like the peas, like the late planted buckwheat. Deer love eating that right away. Takes pressure off the brassica side. You develop that volume and you have diversity, something a little bit more slated to early in the season, something more mid-season. And then we layer that rye about 4 to 5 weeks after we plant the green blend. So not on the brassica side, but on the green blend side, add rye about 150 to 200 pounds per acre, 4 to 5 weeks, which around here is gonna be early September. And then I'm killing that out the following year when it's 18, 24 inches tall because I don't want it to grow to 5, 6 feet tall, take over everything. That takes years to break down in your soil, and you're actually behind by doing that. So you want to kill it when it's 18, 20 inches tall. It's a perfect time to do so. Leave yourself some good thatch for holding some moisture. Helps compete with weeds in the spring, and then you let it die and you replant into it. A lot of times we're using a buckwheat rotation. We use my ultimate no-till planting method a lot. So before we even get to this point, we're putting buckwheat in the ground. When it gets around thigh high to waist high at most, we're spreading the brassica on one half, the green blend on the other. We're smashing it all down with our Packer Max. We're spraying it at the same time. Why do you spray it? Did you know you can mow buckwheat? So when you mow buckwheat, it comes back. When you crush buckwheat, it's the only thing that'll lay flat. It grows back. We don't want it to grow back in that volume because it's going to outcompete some of the smaller seeds like brassica, and maybe we're putting a clover base in there, which I'll talk about in a second. It'll outcompete that. It'll shade it out. So even if it's shade tolerant like rye or clover, it still can be shaded out by something else. Brassica, which is a sun-loving, full sun needing plant, will shade out rye, which is a shade tolerant plant. If it's older and the rye is younger, the brassica will get up, it'll establish, it'll shade it out and kill it. And I've seen that. There's one of those mistakes. Learn from my mistakes and try not to repeat them. But bottom line is we're splitting those plots. We have the diversity on both sides. I'm adding the rye about 4 to 5 weeks later. Maybe we'll add a cold hardy oat or a cold hardy pea at that time, but not until that time because we don't want it to take over. We already have peas in the mix. So that's for the holding plots. Now when we get into a holding plot to me is usually anywhere from a half acre, 3/4 of an acre on up. Hunting plots are more 1/10 of an acre, 1/4 acre on down, 1/8 of an acre, something like that. A lot of times I like a clover base for the hunting plots. That establishes a pattern of use all summer long. It's not big enough to hold a bunch of does and fawns and army there waiting and holding on your property all summer. They'll go somewhere else because it's small and confined. But when mature bucks come through, they like that clover. They find it in June, July, August, just randomly coming through your property. They remember that for later in the season, and it sets up that perfect hunting plot where you just want them to nibble a little and pass through. You're trying to work on volume, take care of your weeds, take care of your soils. Again, plot start, plot boost, fertilize as needed, recommended. And then you have great volume on that going through the season. Add a mock scrape nearby with a stand location, and that is perfect. We also complement that with a water hole on 100 yards on either side so that we're defining that use. They hit the water hole, they go to the hunting plot, and then you have different stands for different times. You might hunt a water hole more morning, the hunting plot more in the afternoon, but give you complementary stand locations. Again, there's a lot of strategy to this. It's not just plant something pretty, it's green, and you'll win. That's not the way it works. So on our clover base for hunting plots, we have a dual threat 365. The dual threat combines clover and brassica. We learned long ago, meaning 2 decades ago, that you don't put big bulbs in when you're putting clover in the mix because those are all holes where clover is not going to grow the following year. You want to take most of the bulbs out. You can have a little bit, 5%, 10% at the most. You take those big bulbs out, put that clover in, put almost a full base of clover, almost a full base of brassica, and it creates a great clover crop for the following year. You're establishing it, planting it at the time for the cool season annual. What does that mean? It means if you're putting it in time for brassica, you're planting around August 1st, and you're throwing your full clover amount in as a base. That established at a time when weeds are dying, moisture is on the increase, you get another shot of moisture in the spring, and that clover will withstand the worst drought that Mother Nature can throw at the following year. It won't a lot of times like this year if you plant in the spring. We've had terrible drought this year. So fall planted clover is awesome. Now if you're planting the green blend, let's say you're planting a pea and oat mix. You're coming to the season, we'll talk about that a little bit late. A pea and oat mix can be great around Labor Day around here. Heavy peas, light oats. You could actually put a clover base in there. You can add our perennial plot power in that mix with peas and oats. The peas and oats die out over the wintertime, you're left with pure clover the following year. When do you plant it? You plant it at the timing for the peas and oats, which is early September, not early August. Again, you don't even think about it. You're throwing the clover in as a base. Don't even think about the timing for the clover. You're thinking about the timing of the cool season annual, which is either the brassica that you plant in early August to end of August, depending on where you're at. Early August, late July north, all the way down to Louisiana, September 1st. Somewhere in that mix is where you plant, or you're planting early September to October, depending on where you're at in that mix, and just throwing the clover down as a base. That's what I do in all my hunting plots. So even if you tried to plant clover this spring, just smoke it all out. If you have weed problems and didn't grow this year, you can still start over. And it's actually a better time to plant. That's what I have to do on a few of my plots this year. It's actually a better time to do that right now. Late plantings, late comers to the food plot game. You just got your food plots done. That's when I'm looking at Labor Day to sometime in September, Labor Day north. Even if I had to go all the way into October 1st in the UP in Michigan, I've had a great success with 300 pounds of winter rye per acre. It germinated with melting snow about a week after the snow on October 1st, and it had a great catch of rye. You want a low lush stand then because you're not going to get a lot of stems per acre, so you want it low and lush. That's why you plant 300 pounds per acre. If I was planting in that same area, I like layering rye. I'd go middle of August, first week of September, last week of September, 100 pounds, 100 pounds, 100 pounds. That's a great way to layer and thicken the stand, but you're not putting all your eggs into one basket as far as heavy rye early where the deer don't like it. They feed down through the older rye to get to the younger rye. It's a great approach. But bottom line is there's a lot you can do late. We like the cold hardy oats and peas, and then combine that with 100 pounds of rye per acre. Great mix. It's something I came up with many years ago. That's what we did when we came down to Wisconsin in 03, 04, 05, 06, is combine those, put them together, oats, peas, rye, and then we'd follow up with rye later if we needed to around October 1st to thicken the stand. But that was a great late food source, late planting, that we would still have something green. And oh, by the way, that rye or wheat is available in the spring. So you get a lot of life in that spring, before spring green up, before alfalfa wakes up, before clover. That rye will be green and standing straight and tall and available for browse 2 to 4 weeks before anything else. And that's the most often missed time in the whitetail woods. So not only is that rye building your soil and smothering weeds going into the following year on that half of your plot that you planted, maybe your brassica failed, maybe you covered up the brassica portion October 1st with 300 pounds of rye per acre. But bottom line is it's smothering weeds the next year. It's offering food source all the way out throughout the season. Obviously, if nothing else lasted, that's your best bet then because it's still green, it's still there. You never want to have a dirt field going into the spring. And then you have that for a smother crop of weeds and building the soil for the following year. So there's a lot you can do late. And of course, rye is the ultimate food plot salvage. If all else fails, you have all these plans right here. And I'll tell you, these plans are fairly foolproof. You know, ultimate no-till, where you can look that up. But when you're putting buckwheat deer in the summertime, if you have drought, you're going to have a failure. If the deer eat it down in the dirt, it's pretty hard to spread seed into it, flatten it with our Packer Max, spray onto it, and get it to have that thatch layer above the seed and get good germination. Always rye. So as late as October 1st in the north and even end of October in the south, you can go up to 300 pounds per acre. Let's say you're in central Indiana. It's mid-September. I would use more like 200 pounds per acre to salvage plot. And if it's mid-October, I'd use 300 pounds and kind of slide that in between somewhere. And again, always take care of it the following year. So bottom line, these are some of the, blended in some of the things we're doing this year, especially with WHS Wildlife Blends. A lot of you aren't aware that we started a seed company a year ago. And now, kid in a candy store type thing. I've practiced and I've experimented. I've written about, created videos, written books, web classes about food plots, spoken in person for many, many years, 20 years. You know, as far as just even being out in the public eye with teaching people how to plant food plots. We started the food plot company a year ago. It's been a huge success. We've shipped seed to almost 50 states now. And we have a full-time individual, 2 full-time individuals working for the seed company. I try to answer all the questions through the people that work in the seed industry, Jen or Wes. And it's really something we live every day. And I have for decades. And now we put it into our own seed company. And I hope you can appreciate it and the work and the experience and the decades that have gone into what we bring you today. Because I get to pick my seeds. I get to do exactly what I want with the seed company. I don't have anyone, you know, because in the past I'd tell someone this, they do this. Now it's all on me. I love putting those mixes together at a kitchen table with our seed wholesaler, coming up with the names and descriptions. So I hope you can appreciate that. The link is in the description. For the 2023 best food plot mix, what is it? Well, depends on if you're in mixed ag, big woods, heavy ag, what your resources and equipment are. Bottom line is, remember this food plot pyramid. It's so critical. I came up with this years ago. It's really, really critical. But it all boils down to attraction, diversity, and volume for the entire season with no gaps. That'll start with this green blend. We actually have corn out here that we use, but we have the space to do so. We don't use corn in Wisconsin, just 50 minutes away. Same type of deer, different size property, different amount of food plots. So we don't use corn over there. And that's something we might sell. Just because I sell it doesn't mean you should use it. Doesn't mean we even use it. Depends on the property. And I hope you can see what works for one property doesn't work for another, and vice versa, even if you're neighbors. And I hope you can have that flexibility and recognize that need for diversity, volume, and attraction going into your food plot season in 2023. And we can't wait to bring you some of the changes and things we'll do for next year that we're experimenting with this year in 2024 and beyond. You can, again, look at all these food plot mixes and kind of understand that strategy for each year going back many years. And I hope it keeps you on track to having great food plots, most of all, a great hunt, safe hunt, and a great herd this fall. Hey folks, I really appreciate you watching, and I want to invite you to check out our main website, whitetailhabitatsolutions.com. I'm going to miss all these, but we have seed to offer, hats, articles, web classes, books, consultations, and even a new podcast. I think we have 17 podcasts out there right now for you to listen to. So we have a lot to offer. Most of all, if you don't want to buy anything, I'm going to keep offering free videos, free articles. We have over 600 articles on the site. And most of all, thank you very much for watching, reading, listening, being a part of Whitetail Habitat Solutions. If you want to check this stuff out, awesome. Links are in the description.